Blog Talk Radio.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast, you're listening to On the Move with Mack, Worley III.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers, I'm Mack, Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. As I've said before, this is not my show. This is your show. This is your grassroots activism movement. It's the On the Move movement, and it cannot function without you. I want to thank each and every one of you for your patriotism and for taking the time to get involved. Today's date is June 8th, 2014, and we've got a really good show in store for you. I'm really excited. We have a special guest that's coming on the show. His name is Paul Addis. He's a Libertarian Party candidate in Washington State, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him. We had him on the show last week, and we had some technical difficulties, as you all may know, and he was kind enough to join us again today. So thank you, Paul Addis. I'm really looking forward to talking to him. We're also going to be talking about whatever else comes up, so feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call. Your topics, anything you'd like to discuss at all, is on the table, so we'll be taking your calls, reading your emails. You can join the conversation today by giving us a call at 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, and with that said, feel free to check us out on the web. We have our website, onthemoveshow.com. You can check us out here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, and facebook.com/onthemoveshow, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and twitter.com/onthemoveshow. On our website, onthemoveshow.com, we've got a bunch of different things in the shop, so feel free to check it out. We got, T-shirts, freeze-dried foods, books that I'd recommend reading, bumper stickers. There's so much stuff on there, so feel free to check it out. Your purchases will go toward making our show bigger and better, and I really do appreciate the support that we've gotten from you guys for that. It has really helped, and I just want to say thanks. So anyway, with that said, I know we have been making some changes here, and I just want to give you guys a heads up of what's going on here. So we are currently back on Blog Talk Radio. And why? Why are we back on Blog Talk Radio? Well, I'll tell you a couple of different reasons. Number one is probably the most important one, is the fact that I'm just not very tech savvy. So Blog Talk Radio is very simple. And it's kind of my go-to thing when I wasn't sure what to do. I know we had some major bugs in the system that was on my end, and it has nothing to do with anything other than I just don't know how to set up a mix minus on my mixer. And I even though I've looked up all the YouTube videos on how to, and I should know how to do it by now, but I just couldn't get it to work. So with that said, I just would like to apologize first and foremost to everybody for last week's show, the bugs that we had, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in anyway, and those of you who are tuning in again today. So, thank you. We're going to continue to try to make the show better. We're going to eventually get over to this Patriot FB network, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. So with that said, I'll keep you guys posted, and I'll let you know about all the changes that we're making. I'd also like to point out the fact that, again, we are always every Friday on the Sounding Off with Tank and Tony, their podcast. So feel free to check us out. It's blogtalkradio.com/sounding off with Tank and Tony. And, we have missed so much. We've been out of the cycle here, the news cycle, for I think it's the third week. Last week was the third week. So, since then we've missed all sorts of different stuff that's going on. So we're going to try to cover it all. There's a lot of news. There's been a lot of shootings that have happened. There's been, the VA scandal came out, and the head of the VA resigned. That's a pretty big deal right there. And then Benghazi. That scandal has been escalating for a really long time. And we're going to talk about it today if we get to it. So if we can get to that point. What else happened? I think, Obama, he talked to future officers at West Point, that military academy, and he didn't get a very good response. I think that was last week that happened. So anyway, yeah, a lot of different things in the news. Like I said, what else? Snowden. He had an interview with Brian Williams on NBC, and I definitely want to talk about that today. And also something I mentioned last week, and I'll go ahead and say it here. Google is coming out with a car that drives itself. What do you guys think about this? I am really concerned about Google having this much control over my life. I mean, Google already has their fingers in every part of your life, basically. You know, that they got Gmail, they got all, like Google Voice, all these different things. Not to mention Google and the NSA, they're pretty cozy up. So, you know, a car that Google has control over, and with that said, that basically the NSA would have control over. I don't really like that idea. I don't. First of all, not even just the logistical reasons of you know, the NSA could drive you off a cliff if you get on their bad side or something. But the actual issue too, that Google would know everywhere that you've been. I mean, not to mention this is already possible through GPS on your phone and things like that. But I mean, there would be a running log in Google of every place that you've ever driven to. And I mean, that's kind of scary. And on top of that, not to mention the fact that, you know, what happens to those of us who don't have cars that drive themselves? I imagine that we would see a big increase in insurance premiums, or maybe just a decrease in your insurance premium if your car drives itself, if it's safer, if it actually is indeed safer to have your car drive itself. Those of us who actually want to continue driving ourselves, maybe down the line, maybe we won't have the opportunity. Maybe they won't even make those kind of cars anymore. And that's kind of concerning to me. I don't want to ever have Google drive me around. I can see the benefit of it. And yeah, you know, you can get work done, you can read, you can sleep. You know, they say it's great for people who've been out drinking on the town. Yeah, that is accurate. That's true. It could possibly prevent DUIs and people driving under the influence of drugs and things like that. Yeah, all those are great. Me personally, I have enough personal responsibility myself to not put myself in that position to begin with. You know, I try my hardest to avoid getting anywhere near a car if I've been drinking at all within that day. So it's very unlikely that I will be getting a DUI anytime in the future. And you know, with that said, that's just because I make those personal decisions. I have personal responsibility. I take responsibility for my actions, and I'm not relying on Google to drive me around. And I don't want to rely on Google. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I'd really like to know what you guys have to say. Is this you know, the way of the future? Do you think that this is where we need to go, or are you kind of hesitant in having Google drive you guys around, having cars that don't even have steering wheels, so you're solely dependent on a computer? I mean, not even just the Google thing, but you know, I really don't like the fact that we're moving fast towards all this AI stuff. It's concerning to me when computers start doing the majority of our thinking for us. You know, I know you can get into like the Matrix and Terminator conversations, but hey, you know, these are things that I have concerns about. But I'd like to know what your opinion is. 619-924-0986. Give us a call. Let us know what you think. Anyway, another thing that's been in the news, and we're going to touch on this too, is Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. I'm sure you have all heard about this. He was exchanged. He was a prisoner in Afghanistan, and he was exchanged for 5 top terrorist leaders that were being held in Guantanamo Bay. And you know, there's a lot of sides to the story, and we're going to try to get to it all. So, anyway, stick around. I'm really excited to get to all this stuff. Before we actually move into our first segment, though, I want to talk about my experience that I had recently. Last weekend, I went to the Libertarian Party of Washington's convention in Seattle. They had a convention there, and there was a whole bunch of different speakers, most of which were politicians. And you know, I just want to say, first of all, I had a really, really good time. You know, I got to meet a lot of people, a lot of liberty-minded people. And one thing that's really cool is I got to actually talk to Governor Gary Johnson, and that was really awesome for me. I didn't know a whole lot about him. I kind of knew where he stood on some policies, but I didn't actually get a chance before this to talk to him. And I actually, you know, got to talk to this guy. He's really personable. I really like Governor Gary Johnson. And by the way, if you weren't aware, Governor Gary Johnson, he ran in 2012 as a presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. So, yeah, that Gary Johnson. So, you know, I have to say, when I left this convention, I had a new feeling of inspiration about the Libertarian Party. I have been concerned. I've had many concerns about the Libertarian Party. And though I philosophically disagree with them on several issues, I would say that for me, the Libertarian Party, I agree with the majority of what they believe. I have differences of opinion when it comes to immigration. Libertarians tend to be very pro-open borders, and I am not for open borders. Libertarians are also, different on several other issues. But, in the big things, the ones that I think matter the most, I think the Libertarian Party is the party of principle. They actually stand for principles. And if you don't know enough about them to really, know what I'm talking about, check them out. Look into the Libertarian Party, because the Libertarian Party, they are the party of principle, ladies and gentlemen. They have one of their slogans basically is the party of the most freedom, and it's true. They just want to, basically let you live your life without the government's influence, and I think that's a really good thing. My big concern in the past with the Libertarian Party has been that in order to really win, in order to win an election as a Libertarian, you obviously get the Libertarian votes, those voting Libertarians out there. That's great. But you have to convince Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle to vote for you. You have to. If you don't, you will lose an election. And one concern is that if you are voting Libertarian as a Republican, you're basically electing a Democrat. That's the concern, and that's what we are told over and over and again. I think you all know where I stand as far as, spineless people who do not support the things that they actually support. They say one thing and they do another. Now, you can find this in the Libertarian Party. I'm not saying you wouldn't, but what I am saying is that you find it less than in the Republican Party. Right now, I feel like I have a choice between a party of huge government and a party of crony capitalism. That's the Republican Party nowadays. Crony capitalism and Obama's Democrats, those are the big government people. I mean, that's what they stand for. They want to get everybody on the government's teat. So Libertarians, they want to have less government. At least that's the party philosophy. Now, keep in mind, do not vote on a party just because they have a certain party platform. Don't vote for a candidate just because he's Libertarian, people. Look into them. If they are a phony Libertarian, if they don't actually represent the views of the party, then don't vote for them. That's just dumb. I will vote for Libertarians, and I'm just telling you now, if Gary Johnson runs for the president, he'll be getting my vote. I really like Gary Johnson. Now, like I said, I don't agree with everything, but the vast majority I do. And these are your personal decisions that you have to decide on, where you stand. But I fundamentally disagree with voting for somebody simply because they're a Republican, simply because they're a Democrat, or simply because they're any other third party. I fundamentally disagree with it. Look these people up. Look at what they represent, and you decide for yourself. Is this somebody that you can get behind, or is it not? So, with that said, let's go ahead and go into the first segment of today, and this segment we like to call This Day in History.
This Day in History.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Yesterday,
what country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down.
A date which will live in infamy.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
We will never surrender. All right, so on June 8th, 1998, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, they elected Charlton Heston as their president. Charlton Heston is well known. I mean, this guy is famous for a speech titled "From My Cold Dead Hands." Now, this is him talking about how you can take my guns away from me when you pry them from my cold dead hands. This is a direct advertisement, basically, a direct statement to gun grabbers, all right? This is in your face. I really like Charlton Heston. And I would just like to point out that Charlton Heston, he was a supporter of Democratic politicians, and he was a civil rights leader in the 1960s. But let's also point out that Heston eventually rejected liberalism, and he founded a conservative political action committee, and he started to support Ronald Reagan. So I would just like to point out the fact when somebody opens their eyes and they start to realize, hey, this is wrong. This is what Charlton Heston done. I think that a lot of conservatives, unless they were brought up in an ultra conservative household and they understood politics, a lot of conservatives may have been liberals at one point. And just so you know, everybody out there, I used to be a young dumb liberal back in the day. Back when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about anything, but I was raised up in a time where it was cool to be a Democrat. It was cool, and I didn't know anything about it. I was apolitical. I had no view in politics, and I just nothing wrong with Bill Clinton, whatever. But I didn't know what I was talking about. Since then, I've opened my eyes. I've rejected liberalism. These are things that I think thinking people do. And anybody that says that I'm closed-minded or other people out there are closed-minded, especially in like the Libertarian Party, the conservatives out there, I have to disagree. The conservatives that I know are some of the most open-minded people that I've ever talked to. They're continually looking at themselves, looking at their politics, and trying to decide if they're on the right side of history or not. I do that all the time. I'm wrong all the time, all right? Don't take anything I say as scripture, everybody, because I'm wrong a lot. But I do my research, and I try to come to the answer that I think makes the most sense. And especially, in the gun debate, I think it just makes sense to the right to bear arms, not to mention it's a constitutionally protected human right. So let's back to Mr. Heston here. Charlton Heston, he was the NRA president from 1998 to 2003. He served as president for 5 terms. 5 terms as the president of the NRA. And unfortunately, Charlton Heston, he died in 2008. It was April 5 from complications of pneumonia. So I have here the famous speech from Charlton Heston, and I would like to play it for you all so you can get an idea of what it was like. And here it is.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first. In the hearts of freedom's vanguard, the smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight, because they know that sacred stuff resides in that wooden stock and blued steel. Something that gives the most common man the most uncommon of freedoms. When ordinary hands can possess such an extraordinary instrument, that symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty. That's why those 5 words issue an irresistible call to us all, and we must. So, as we set out this year to defeat the divisive forces that would take freedom away, I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed, and especially for you, Mr. Gore. From my cold, dead hands.
From my cold, dead hands. let me just say, and we're going to get back to this in a second, after we have Mr. Paul Addis on the show, but there are divisive forces that are trying to take away liberty. And right now, I'd like to point out the fact that the NRA is actually becoming one of those divisive forces. We're going to talk about this in great detail in a few moments, but in the meantime, we're going to go to a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to have Mr. Paul Addis on the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring on Mr. Paul Addis on the show. Let me see if I can get him on the line here. Are you there, Paul?
Hey, Mack.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and there's no echo this time.
Well, that's good. You know, I got to tell you, I have been so frustrated working with this stupid mixer. This thing has really gotten on my nerves. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And I really apologize for last week. I wanted to just say thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I'm sure you're getting a lot smarter. When you figure all that stuff out, you're going to be on top of the world.
Well, yeah, I guess. But I'm, like I said, it's just been really frustrating. I am probably the least tech-savvy person that I know personally. And just the sheer fact that I can even do Blog Talk Radio or things like this, I'm impressed with myself at the fact that even just getting this podcast up and running off.
No, you got a great radio show, and I appreciate all that you're doing out there. We need more of these alternative media voices out there in the wilderness, because there are people that want to hear what you have to say and what your guests have to say.
Yes, sir. Well, I sure do appreciate it. And let's hit the ground running here. I got a bunch of questions, and some of these I asked you last week, but now everything should be sorted out with the tech here, and we can get it on the record and make sure that your listeners can actually your supporters can actually hear what you have to say, and maybe you'll convince some people and get some more votes. So anyway, first question I had, I just want to double check, what district and position are you running for again?
It's the 36th district, and it's position 2. It's for state representative, and the 36th district includes in Seattle, it's Belltown, Queen Anne, Magnolia, Ballard, Finney Ridge, that area.
I see. Okay, so, and just for our listeners, I know I asked you this last week, but who is the incumbent again?
It's Gail Tarleton.
Okay, and she's a Democrat, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, for our listeners out here, because like I said, I think the first 4 questions I have on here we've asked again, but we're just going to go through them again just so everybody has it. So I want to know, why do you want the job? And specifically, I'd like to know exactly what the incumbent has done that you don't agree with. Okay,
well, as far as why I want the job, and I think it's similar to the question people ask me, why are you running, is because I believe that the political philosophy of the Libertarian Party is the better of the choices that we usually have between the top 2 parties or any other third party. And the problem I have with the current setup is, at least in Washington State, we haven't in the past had that choice on the ballot. And it's a point that Michael Pickens, the state party chairman, has made multiple times, that even if your product is good and you like the product and you would like to tell other people to choose the product, if they go to the ballot box, if they go to the booth and they don't have that choice on the ballot, all they have is Democrat or Republican, then it really doesn't matter. Practically, your product doesn't exist. If it's not a choice for them to make, it would be like if you liked Coca-Cola and you went to the store and they didn't have Coca-Cola, and you went to the second store and they didn't have it. It really wouldn't matter how good Coca-Cola is or how much you want it. If it's not a choice, it practically doesn't exist in the marketplace. So the reason I'm running is simply, initially anyway, is to put that choice on the ballot for the people in the 36th district, that if they like the product, they will have that choice at the voting booth.
Yes, sir. So specifically on that, and we'll get back to the second part of that question, but I would just like to piggyback on that one. Do you think you're the best man for the job?
Well, if you're saying best man between the two of us on the ballot or the best man in the entire 140,000, whatever people in the 36th district, I'm not sure of what all the qualifications of everybody is. Now I look at my incumbent, and getting back to what do you think the incumbent, the second part of that question, if it's between myself and the incumbent, which it will be on the ballot anyway, the thing that the incumbent does that I think is not good, and I think I will do it differently, is basically my prime issue, platform issue in this campaign is the influence of corporate dollars in politics today. And that's a national problem, I think, but it also is playing out in my district. And the incumbent, my opponent, her top contributors, 85% of them are corporations and PACs, special interests. 63% of her overall dollars come from those entities. And I think that as a libertarian, I certainly believe in a lot of free market solutions. Unfortunately, we don't have a free market, and part of the uneven playing field that businesses are operating in today, it's uneven because of the interference of government policies and legislation, and some of that comes directly from the influence of the money that was given to them in their campaigns. So I think that's a problem. That's a game she plays, even though it's not illegal. It's like Martin Luther King said, everything Hitler did in Germany was legal. So it's not a question of is what she's doing legal. The question is that the best system for our best political system? And I say no. And so someone asked me the other day, why are you running against Gail Tarleton? And I said, well, I don't see it as running against Gail personally. I see it as running against a system that I think needs to be fixed. So that's kind of the answer to part two as well.
Yes, sir. Okay, so as far as because it's crony capitalism what's going on. So can you name some specific situations that the incumbent has, what she's actually done specifically, and then what you would do differently?
Well, I can say that she's, as far as the money, taking the money, she's taken money from companies like the Ballot Oil Company, AT&T, some unions, and some PACs. So here's the thing. Even if, a person doesn't directly go out and say, okay, well, I got money from the Ballot Oil Company, so I'm going to go out and make a law that helps them and doesn't, and it hurts their competition, which I can give you specifics on things that have happened in Washington State along those lines. But I think the question really is, if you have the choice between two people, if you say, well, okay, let's say Gail, or someone like Gail has taken the money, but hasn't, I can't say it's necessarily done anything. It really comes down to a matter of trust. And if you've got someone who takes the money and then someone who doesn't, the question is, can you 100% trust that person? And I think the answer is no, regardless of what their past has been. It's more about, is that a system that lends itself to your 100% trust? And I think the only way to make sure that things don't happen in the future, whether they've happened in the past or not, is to say, you know what, at least with this person here, there's no hint of favoritism. Whereas this person, I can't say because I know that they've taken the money, and therefore if they do something, past or future, I can understand why they would, because there's a special interest there. So no, I can't think of, I haven't, again, I'm not running against Gail specifically, so I'm not should I say, Gail's done something bad specifically. She may have. I haven't done that type of research yet. Probably will throughout the campaign. But again, I'm trying not to attack her personally more than just say, this system is not working well, and I'm not going to play the game.
I see. So you're basically running against the two-party system as opposed to running against the actual incumbent. So here's my question then, okay? And I understand, you don't want to do any kind of dirty campaign or smear tactics against her, and in some of these you may not necessarily know. So what I would like to do is just kind of run down the line. If you could tell my listeners basically some of the things that you stand for. I mean, I understand you don't take political money, but as far as policies, other things like that. First of all, gun rights. I'm assuming that being a libertarian, you are pro-gun. Is that correct?
Yes, the U.S. and Washington Constitution gives us, as it should, the right to bear arms. I'm a veteran myself. I own a gun. I have a concealed carry permit as well. So I certainly do not want. And here's the thing: there are people on the other side that want more gun control laws in place. And I just see there's a slippery slope there, in my opinion. And I think anybody that's a student of history knows that, especially with government, you give an inch, they'll take a mile. Whether it be, if we were to set up a very small income tax in Washington State, I think eventually that would become greater. If we give a little more power to the government as far as controlling our right to bear arms, I think that would only lead to more and more, and the people on that side of the argument would not be satisfied with even what some people might consider logical gun control laws. So it's not so much that I disagree with some of the folks who say, well, we just need to make sure we don't get the guns in the hands of the wrong people or some argument like that. It's really about, I don't want to turn the dial that way to infringe on the rights of people to bear arms. So, I think, the only people we have to worry about are the ones that are going to do wrong, even if we do have the laws. So, I would certainly want to protect the rights of the people to bear arms.
Yes, sir. Okay, so what are some other issues that you'd like to give your take on as far as your actual policies?
Yeah, I think for the Washington State, we're talking about the state representative, recently there was the decision by the Supreme Court of Washington State talking about how we're not funded with education. And that's something that our Constitution says, in Washington State, that we have to have an education for the people. So along the lines of education, which is important to a lot of folks out there that have kids in schools and what type of education to get and how it's funded, that type of thing, I have a few ideas on that issue. And one of them is parental control over the education of their children. I think that groups, whether it be local, school boards or unions, teachers unions, or just administration like the principals and all, I think there's a lot of interest out there in how things are run. And some of it is the interest relates to finances. And whereas I think parents are much more concerned with the type of education their children are getting and how well they're going to be suited for the world when they get out of school, and whether or not the schools are helping them succeed or failing them. So along those lines, I think some people may have heard about the law that's down in California they have called parent trigger laws. And parent trigger laws is where basically the parents are given the right. I mean, it seems odd that parents would need to be given this right by the government, but basically they're given the right to have a redress of grievances basically against their local school administration, a school or the school board, and by petition, a certain number of percentage of the population of the school district getting enough signatures on the petition, parents can actually fire principals, fire staff, change the school from being a public school to a charter school, and they have quite a lot of power given to the parents down there. And recently there was a group in one district, I think in Compton, that did it, that used the law and got the petitions, and I think fired the principal and something. But I like that idea. There was another district in California where the parents started to get the petition going according to the law, and the school made changes, although they had not been communicating with the parents up to that point. But they went ahead and started talking to them, made the changes before the petitions were all gathered because they saw the threat coming. So I think giving parents that kind of power over the education of their children is right up my alley as a libertarian, putting the power in the hands of the people and not in the hands of the government. So that's a piece of education I'd honestly like to see here. And so that, as well as when you come to funding education, I think the bill that passed the House here in Washington about the hemp, like agricultural hemp for industrial purposes, I think there is a lot of revenue for the state that's waiting to come in if we develop that type of industry. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in that industry, and I think industrial hemp could really be a boom for this state if we could get it going.
Okay, so
that could help fund education.
Two questions I have in terms of that then. Okay, there's a conversation that I've had several times with a lot of people about education and as far as the tax money for that. Mm-hmm. For me personally, I do not like the fact that, even though I do understand that it is, it could be seen as overall good. I understand the position. I don't like the fact that the government taxes me for schools, for example. All right, I look at that as kind of an affront to me because, first of all, I don't have any children. I'm not taking part in that. I look at it as kind of a coercive tax. I have no choice. I'm paying for somebody else's thing, and the excuse for that is, well, schools are good, educating our kids are good, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But the problem is I don't have a choice, and when you take away my choices, that's the same thing as taking away my freedom. You're basically, and if I decide not to pay those taxes, you have enforcers that come by at gunpoint basically, and they enforce those taxes. So, what's your actual thought on schools getting funded through the government and that tax being collected like that?
Well, I understand your position on that, and I share a lot of your concerns. The idea of, taking money in taxes by force, certainly a principle that I don't, as a libertarian, it does kind of run against my basic principles as a libertarian. However, at the same time, I believe that there are, and whether or not education is one of these is up for debate, but I think there are certain services that I think we actually as a society need to fund. For instance, I would say like the fire department would be something that people pay from their property tax, and that's something that because the fire, if your house catches on fire, that gives you a service that actually is beneficial to you if it can protect you. However, with education, I'm not sure. Yeah, the education that we have, they basically on it, even outside of whether or not they should be taking the money from you and you don't have kids and all that, is what are we actually getting for the money? So there's definitely the principle, should you be doing it at all? And then if you are doing it, because you got to fund it somehow in Washington State because it's in the Constitution. So the first step, if we didn't like that, would be to change the Washington State Constitution. And I'm not, certainly that's not my platform or one of my issues in my campaign to change the Washington State Constitution. But so being pragmatic about it, that's what we have. We have to fund it somehow. Maybe there's different ways to fund it. But I think that if the state, if you were somehow getting a benefit from it, and they were doing a good job, and somehow translating to people being well educated and coming into Washington and bringing kids here and getting good education, getting creating value in society based on have a lot of entrepreneurs coming out of the schools, and we could actually show that society, everybody was getting better and more prosperous because of that. Yeah, maybe that's a benefit that we need, but honestly, in principle, I don't like the idea of just taking money from people like that, like government does in general. But again, it's in the Washington State Constitution that we have to fund it. And right now, I don't have any, idea of how better to fund it, other than, giving parents more control over how even finances and how the money is spent. But it's a difficult problem.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from, and in terms of schools, and even in terms of fire departments and whatnot, I've always believed that we could do it better if it was private, if it was all privatized, and when you look at it from the standpoint of it being coercively collected and people not having a choice in that matter, let's just look at the fire department, for example. It would make sense in a free market system to have that, so that service people would pay for, and people that can't pay for it, there could be some kind of subsidy and things like that. There could be programs or charity things like that they could do, and I personally I don't have any problem with that, especially as a charity aspect. But it would make sense as a property owner to buy fire insurance. I mean, a private company coming and putting out your fires, I personally, I think that would be a good thing, and I think that everybody would do that anyway. My whole thought, when people say, oh, we need the government to do this, the government to build our roads, we need the government to be in control of the fire department, we need our government to be in control of the schools, it doesn't make sense to me that we can't do it without the government. We absolutely can do it without the government. There's no problem with that.
Sure.
It's just right now the government does things inefficiently anyway. We could do it better, and we could do it less costly. We could run so many different things without the government, but people are afraid. People are afraid to turn it over to the free market. And I think we'd be better off. And it sounds to me like, as far as your principles, what you're saying, I understand where you're coming from as far as not wanting to change the Constitution. And, I personally didn't know that about the Washington State Constitution. So it does make sense. I understand. But that's just something that as far as a libertarian, philosophy, I agree with that, coercively taking money from people is a bad thing. I just think that's really bad. So anyway, I'd like to move forward here a little bit. I want to give our listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So if you don't mind, Paul, would you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah. So my professional background right now, I work at Alaska Airlines. I'm a project manager in the finance division. In the past, I've worked 20 years at Delta Airlines in both finance and marketing, and retired from there, moved here to Seattle 6 years ago. And I'm also a veteran. I was 4 years active duty in Army intelligence. And also I am the CEO of a nonprofit that does humanitarian work over in East Africa. We've been doing that for 10 years. And I'm the vice president of the Belltown Community Council in Seattle. Recently was elected to the Belltown Community Council. And so I work in the neighborhood. That's a nonpartisan council here in the neighborhood that kind of does things within the neighborhood, for the neighborhood, and love, do a lot of traveling. I've traveled all over, and as far as the community work, I also have been volunteering for years at the Bread of Life Mission down in Pioneer Square, and so just got a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And I was a Republican. And I was a precinct committee officer, up in the PCO up in Snohomish County, the first legislative district. But that was, a couple of years ago. I was a Ron Paul delegate at the GOP convention in 2012. My wife Kathy was also a delegate for Ron Paul. We did not get, voted to go down to Tampa to represent Washington, unfortunately, for Ron Paul. But we were active back then in the GOP, and have earlier this year, switched over to the Libertarian Party because basically I would rather be in a smaller party where I'm comfortable with 100% of the people than be in a larger party where I'm comfortable with about 10% of the people.
Yeah, I definitely understand the shift there. I went on a rant a little bit before I brought you on, but I've been really looking hard at the Libertarian Party over the past, I would say, 6 months, and I'm fed up. I'm so fed up with the Republican Party, and I feel like I can't vote for these people anymore. I cannot vote for these rhinos. I can't vote for people who I don't support, and I'm tired of this whole my candidate lost. So now I have to vote for the guy who is just a piece of something. Somebody who I absolutely don't believe in, basically, and that is basically just going to lose the election for us anyway. I'm so tired of this, and being that you're a Republican, I think that the Libertarian Party is the party that Ronald Reagan was talking about when he said that we need bold colors, a bold party that has bold colors, no pale pastels. The Libertarian Party, I think, is the party that Reagan was talking about, because I'll tell you, the Republicans now have abandoned that. It is the party of pale pastels. It's the Democrat light party, basically, and nobody can see a difference anymore. So why would I want to waste my vote when I can vote Libertarian? Why would I want to vote for a Republican when I'm basically just throwing it away to somebody I don't believe in? And that's the concern that people have when they say, I don't want to vote Libertarian because I'll waste my vote. They're not going to get elected. Well, you're wasting it anyway. You're voting for somebody you don't believe in. How about you, instead of wasting it that way, you actually don't waste it because you're doing something you believe in. You're supporting somebody that you actually believe in. And I really, I've really been getting more and more libertarian with the big L lately. I consider myself a conservative libertarian, but I'm looking at more into the libertarian candidates. And another question I have for you, I'm curious. I know, you made the switch over from Republican to Libertarian, but I'm curious what actually brought you into politics to begin with.
Well, I'm from Georgia, lived in Atlanta, although I've traveled all over the world, but that's where I grew up. And down there, it basically socially, it's kind of they call it the Bible Belt, the South, and so there's a big mix of religion and politics and society there. It all runs together, and so you're kind of just brought up, and it's the environment that you're brought up in. So I was basically born a Republican, in that sense. When we moved to Washington, we weren't that politically active in Georgia. We would just, go vote maybe in the primary, certainly when there was a presidential election, but we would vote Republican when we did vote. When we came out to Washington 6 years ago, that was when we became more politically active because we were we heard more ideas, some of the ideas like Ron Paul's ideas that we hadn't heard a lot of in the mainstream Republicans down in Georgia. So it was those ideas that made us more politically active and thinking this is something worth fighting for. So we were actually trying to change the GOP, which it has been changed over the years. It's been changed by the Christian Coalition at times. It's been changed by all types of movements. The Tea Party certainly made their impact on the GOP recently. So we were trying to change. We were part of the group that was trying to change things. So that it was really Ron Paul that got us politically active and out doing things. And honestly, it's that same message of liberty that has made us switch from the GOP to the Libertarian Party. It was a natural progression as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. So let me ask you, you mentioned the Tea Party. What are your thoughts on the Tea Party?
Well, my thoughts on the Tea Party are similar to my thoughts on many grassroots causes that happen. But Tea Party in particular, I see somebody like Ron Paul, who's many call the grandfather of the Tea Party. When it first started, there was a smaller group that had some really good ideas about what they wanted to do and the type of reform they wanted. But as it grew in popularity and in clout and in power in a way, anytime a group or a cause, whether it be the environmental movement or Occupy or any of those things, when it gets to a point where it starts actually getting some credibility and some power in its circles, then there are interests from outside who want to come in and co-opt those causes for their purpose. And I think that's what's happened to the Tea Party. So the Tea Party we see today isn't necessarily controlled by the same interest that it started off with. So you can still hear some of the echoes of that original intent, but it's certainly some of the folks that are calling themselves Tea Party and are more, some of them are just rhinos, basically.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay, I got a question from a listener for you, and I asked you this last week, but I want to ask it again here. He's asking, what you're doing to inspire people to volunteer for your campaign.
Well, I think that, and this gets to like how do we get volunteers and get people involved in the campaign. I think number one, choosing an issue, your main issue. If you choose the right issue that people are already passionate about. For instance, there have been polls recently that showed as much as 80%, 75 to 80% of Americans think that there's a problem with the influence of corporate money in politics. So that being my main issue, there are already people out there that are concerned with that. Being the only candidate that doesn't take the money makes me different. So it's easy for me to talk to people about that. It's something I believe in, and it's something that they're passionate about. So it's about getting the message out. And you can do that through your friends and family and work associates, and certainly in the Libertarian Party, it's helped greatly that the Libertarian Party in Washington State has had a recent renaissance or renewal, I would say, and the convention was highly attended. There's hundreds of people attended that. They saw the candidates, they heard the speakers, so that helps. I'm piggybacking on that as well. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and honestly, there are things that have happened that I couldn't have planned. So I think, there's some divine intervention there. There's some sweat equity. There's some synergies with organizations like the Libertarian Party and their events. So you do anything you can, and you'd be amazed. I mentioned it at the convention when I was doing one of my talks there at the podium that when I started this thing, when I decided to run, I didn't have any. That's my wife and I. As I started doing things like, filing for candidacy, going to some events, it looked like I was all alone in a way. But what I found out since then is that as you take those steps, you start to see that there are other people that were already there waiting for somebody to take those steps, and they're willing now to jump in and take some steps with you. So I would say for anybody who's thinking about it, you're really not as alone as you might think, and eventually if you keep taking those steps, you're going to find others walking with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, hey, Paul, we got to cut to a quick commercial break. I want to come back with you after the break and talk more about how people can help get involved in your campaign. Can you stick around for a few more minutes with us?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll be right back with more from Paul Addis. And if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask him on the air, feel free to give us a call. The telephone number is 619-924-0986, or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. When we last left, we were talking with Libertarian candidate Paul Addis, and he'll be back on the line here in a moment. If you want to join the conversation, please give us a call. The telephone number is 619-924-0986. Are you there, Paul?
Yes.
All right. Hey, okay, so what I would like to do is give you an opportunity to plug your website if you got one, and email address, contact information, how people can get involved, anything that you need, let people know, go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mack. And it's the website is electpauladdis.com. That's elect and PAULADDIS.com. And all the contact information is on there, phone number, email, contact form.
Yes, sir. Okay. So with that said, I got a couple quick questions here for you, and I figured this would be a good way to wrap up our interview here. I like to ask people these questions from time to time. So the very first question I have for you here, if there's one thing that you could change about our government in an instant, all right, you could just flip a switch and change something about it. And I based on our conversation, I kind of already have an idea what it's going to be. But what would that one thing be?
Well, now, are we talking, well, I will say, at least nationally, would be the devaluation of the U.S. dollar. I think that touches on so many things, whether it be, education or specifically in Seattle, we've had this $15 minimum wage thing going on. And I think when people talk about that issue, they don't ask the question of, well, why can't you live on $10 an hour, $9 an hour, $12 an hour? Why is it that it's so hard for people to live on that? And of course, people say, oh, well, it's just not enough. But it should be. The U.S. dollar shouldn't be devalued enough that you can't live on that. The reason that people are saying really that you need to up the minimum wage is because the dollars that they're getting aren't buying what they need. So I think that's a serious problem for our country, and that means for Washington State as well. If I could really get some type of backing for our currency instead of the fiat currency we have today, I think that would really help in solving some of the problems we have, some of the financial problems we have and are going to have.
Yes, sir. So, we'll touch on the minimum wage here for a second. For me, I'm not a fan of the minimum wage, and the left, they like to use these words. Some key words that they like to do are like living wage. We're looking for a living wage. People that work should be able to provide for their family. And though I understand and I agree with the concept that if you work, you should be able to provide. But the issue is fairness, and that's basically what they're saying is that it's just not fair. And some people make more money than others, and that's not fair. So we need to force employers, private companies, to pay people more so that they can live off of it. And again, there's that coercive force that we talked about earlier. For me, first of all, the whole mentality of a living wage is a little bit ridiculous. There are some jobs that pay more than others. And if you are in a dead end job, if you're working as a cashier at McDonald's, I mean, you should expect that you're not going to make as much as a Fortune 500 CEO. It just makes sense. So those kind of jobs are going to pay less. Now, if you're okay with having that job and you're okay with being in that job for the rest of your working life, then you're making certain concessions there that you're okay with that pay. If you don't have the drive to get another job somewhere else that pays more, or use that job as a stepping stone to gain work experience to go somewhere else, then you've made that choice. It's a personal decision. And I'm not a fan of the minimum wage. I think obviously the devaluation of the money, that is a huge issue, and I definitely agree with you. But I don't necessarily even think that the living wage that they're asking for applies for those kind of jobs. I mean, you cannot, no matter if the economy was good or if we were backed by by a non-fiat currency like gold or silver. If we had gold and silver backing our dollar, every dollar printed, you still wouldn't be able to survive working at McDonald's for a family of four. You just can't. It's just not. It's not the kind of job. It's meant for people who have no work experience. Things along those lines. Do you agree with me on that?
Definitely, wholeheartedly. And of course, I'm speaking of somebody who might work, 2 minimum wage jobs, working, 60, 70 hours a week that could maybe afford, an apartment down in Burien or something. So I'm not speaking of raising a family of four, on a McDonald's job. I certainly don't agree that all jobs should provide a living wage for a family of four in downtown Seattle. So yeah, I mean, we've all, I hope most of us, listening here have worked those entry level jobs when we were in high school or college, and so there should be those jobs out there for people to get into the working world and learn some things about being on time, being under a boss and learning to work with a team and different things that you learn in those entry-level jobs that honestly are giving you more benefit than just the pay. So, I don't agree with the minimum wage, especially what they're doing here in Seattle, what they did in SeaTac. I think even in SeaTac we're seeing some of the results of that where people are talking about, well, hey, we're not getting our free meal anymore. Hey, they're not giving us as much overtime anymore. Hey, we're not getting some of the benefits we had. So actually we liked it better before we had this thing. So, I think you're starting to see some of the repercussions of it. And definitely, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think they really shot themselves in the foot on this one, and they're gonna end up paying the price. I mean, it sucks. I mean, it really does suck that they're going to feel the pressure that they put on themselves from this thing. But now
we're all gonna feel it.
Exactly.
I mean, I was out today in Magnolia going door to door with my material that's in my district, and ran across a lady who was just coming back from work because she closes her restaurant at 3. She owns the restaurant. And she was telling me it's a restaurant that's been up there for 16 years, and she said, I'm going to have to lay people off, and honestly, I'll probably end up selling the thing. Yeah.
I mean, and on top of that, I mean, not only are employers going to be forced to fire people, to lay people off, to sometimes in certain cases move to another place where they can afford to do business, but on top of this, these people that are entering the workforce, all right, young Americans that are entering the workforce, for the first time ever, they don't have any experience. They don't have any skills. So these employers are going to be less likely to hire them because they bring very little to the table. They have to hire somebody who has some skills already, who brings stuff to the table. So, and the employee pool, the applicant pool, is going to be rich with people who have work experience that are trying to get a job, any job, something. And it's just going to be very difficult for America's youth to find work nowadays. I mean, it's going to be hard.
Well, it's one of those things that I personally, it's hard for me to understand how people think this is a good idea. But I think, and this goes to something that a friend of Robin Kerner from Blue Republican Radio talks about in one of the classes he gives on helping us learn how to win supporters instead of arguments. He talks about the paradigms that people live under. And I think with the progressives, they live under this paradigm that they have these good intentions, as you say, to help the workers and all this. And so they see the opposition or the conservatives as people who don't have good intentions. They're bad. So it's a good versus bad thing, where conservatives usually think that they're right and they have the right way to do things, and the liberals are wrong. They're not bad or evil. They're just wrong and ignorant. And so those are the ways that the two different sides look at the other side. It's hard to get people out of those paradigms when you're talking to somebody on the left and saying, well, the minimum wage is going to hurt people. But in their mind, it's like, no, you're just for big companies, and we're trying to help people, And so it's hard to talk about those issues when people are entrenched in their paradigm. But yes, I think that Seattle is going to find out, and we're all going to suffer for it if this thing keeps going.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, all right, I got one last question for you, and this will wrap up the interview here. I like to ask this question to most of my guests on the show. So, what does it mean to you specifically, Paul, to be a patriot?
Well, to be a patriot, I think it goes to, as a veteran, I know, took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. And I think even before I was in the military, it's something that I felt that document in our country is what protects the rights that we have naturally. And so I think a patriot is somebody who recognizes those rights for others and for themselves, and is willing to do what it takes, whether it's just running for office or whether it's to take up arms in the military, something to defend the country or whatever. It's doing it because you understand that everybody here has those rights, and you're willing to do something to defend those rights for everybody.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And, one thing that really inspired me at the Libertarian Party convention was, that one speech that was given was that everybody needs to stand up and do their thing, whatever their thing is. For some people it may be, running for office like you're doing. Some people it may be, helping join the campaign and supporting people that they believe in. Other people like me, it may be to have your own podcast and to get the message of liberty out those kind of things. But whatever your thing is,
that's right. Yeah.
You need to be out there doing it. You need to do your thing, whatever that is. So, anyway,
that's correct. I believe that was Johnny Rocket. Johnny Rocket Adams that said that in the speech, and he's doing similarly. He has a radio show. In fact, I heard you on his radio show, and
yes,
he
sir.
decided I really would like to come on your radio show. And you're right. You and I and all the people out there, and Johnny Rocket and everybody that's doing whatever they can do to turn the dial towards liberty a little bit. We're all pushing together, and I really do appreciate what you're doing and love the show. So I thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you came on, man. It really means a lot, and thank your wife for letting you come on and get the time out of your day. And one last time, can you give my listeners your website and information one more time, just know where to find you?
Yes, you can find me at electpauladdis.com, and you'll find all the contact information on there and all about me. And please, if you're in the Seattle area and you'd like to volunteer, I would really appreciate it. We can find things for you to do that are within your schedule, so I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and I look forward to hearing more from you. So don't be a stranger, Paul.
Oh, I won't. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Take care. All right. So at this point, everybody, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to follow up on the story from the NRA and the divisive forces that I was talking about earlier. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. So, when we last left, we were talking with Paul Addis. He's a Libertarian Party candidate. He gave us a really good interview for the show here, and I'm really excited about Paul. I like the whole philosophy of not taking money, from corporate entities and things like that. So, I'm following him. I think he's a really good guy. So do your research. Find out if he's a candidate for you, especially if you live in the 36th district, I believe is the district he's in. So, just make up your mind for yourself. So anyway, back to what we were saying when we left. I was saying how I wanted to discuss the NRA. And, here's my problem, okay? The NRA has recently come out against open carry. All right, you all might have heard this, but they came out with a statement talking about open carry Texas and their demonstrations. And one of the things that they said is that they're downright scary and weird. Really, NRA? Really? Come on. This is really frustrating for me. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard that. I knew for a while that the NRA was not necessarily the biggest supporters of open carry, but this truly shocked me. So anyway, I have a clip here from about the NRA talking about open carry Texas. So here it is.
The National Rifle Association is taking aim at the tactics of some Texas gun rights activists. The NRA is using terms like weird and scary to describe open carry protesters who take their rifles into restaurants and other public establishments. Fox 4's Melissa Cutler on this story tonight. Melissa, very unusual here, the NRA going after gun rights supporters with language like that, right?
Yeah, Steve, you never hear stuff like that, and that's what made so many people sit up and take notice. The gun lobby has been seen as one group together in lockstep advocating the same thing. This is among the first time there seems to be a distancing of one group from another.
Memorial Day weekend in Fort Worth, an open carry event turns confrontational.
I'm following this guy around.
A local Marine who went to the event with his camera claims he was followed and harassed.
Falls Media Productions. Anything else you want to know? 'Cause I'm not the one out here threatening and being scary.
The open carry folks say they felt threatened and started filming him for their safety. But this incident and other cases of protesters carrying rifles into restaurants have gotten the NRA's attention. Last Friday, the NRA's lobby group published an online letter saying these protesters are crossing the line from enthusiasm to downright foolishness. It's not only rare, but it's starting to look downright weird and downright scary.
And so it's very disheartening to see an organization that's touted to be the #1 proponent of gun rights in America throwing their own members under the bus.
A spokesman for Open Carry Texas says the NRA shouldn't have gone public. Instead, it should have contacted groups privately.
What I think was wrong about it is the fact that the Second Amendment is very, very straightforward. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so any organization that claims to support gun rights in America should stand behind any group that's looking to further that message.
But gun lobbyists say the public tactics are hurting the goal of trying to expand open carry laws to include handguns. In a podcast on the website opencarryreport.com, one very influential gun rights lobbyist described an encounter last April with a Republican lawmaker at the state capitol.
Every office I went into today asked me, can't you do something to stop the rifle demonstrations? Nobody wants to hear this, but the message is being lost.
Just to be clear, that is Alice Tripp, Texas State Rifle Association. So anyway, we'll continue on with it. Here you go.
Gun rights advocates warn the NRA is giving ammunition to anti-gun groups. One of those groups, Moms Demand Action, said, "We are gratified that the NRA is supporting our agenda by admitting that open carry groups in Texas are going too far. Their actions are senseless and disturbing to Texas families and responsible gun owners."
The gun advocates believe the NRA should retract its statements because they are sowing division among Second Amendment supporters. Open Carry Tarrant County, the group who actually confronted the Marine, was not immediately available for comment. Steve?
Melissa, a couple quick questions. You say gun advocates want the NRA to retract. You mean the Open Carry Tarrant County gun advocates, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just to kind of go more broadly, on Facebook, Fox 4's, mine, probably yours, a lot of comments from people who describe themselves as concealed handgun owners, hunters, gun enthusiasts, using the same kind of NRA language to describe what they're seeing as weird. Is this NRA statement a step we're going to hear more about? Is this the beginning of divisiveness between gun rights folks, do you think?
Well, it's really hard to say at this juncture. The statement's certainly, in some people's eyes, divisive as far as the gun rights groups are concerned, but is it going to pit one against the other? It could start to, if there's wide disagreement on the methodology of getting their point across. For example, if gun rights groups come across as aggressors, that could really change the paradigm. The groups are all independent of each other. For example, Open Carry Texas is not the same as Open Carry Tarrant County, even though those names are very similar, but they do often show up at the same demonstration, so it's understandable for people to think it's actually the same group, and actually they're very, very separate.
All right,
so, this is the divisiveness. This is the divisiveness that Charlton Heston was talking about. The NRA is actually perpetuating division within the 2A community, the Second Amendment community. I hear all the time, and I know I've spoke about it before, and it really frustrates me beyond belief when I hear somebody say, I support the Second Amendment, but I don't support open carry, or but I this, that, or something else, okay? Look, if you support the Second Amendment, it is very, very clear cut. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not. And that's a very strong word. Shall not. Those two words, very strong. All right? It's very clear cut. There's no real way to interpret it any different other than the fact that any law that is passed which infringes on someone's right to bear arms is unconstitutional. So keep this in mind, all right? Every single law that is on the books right now is, in fact, infringing on the right to bear arms. Every gun control measure, everything is currently in violation of the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. Every single law. Now, with that said, if you say, I support the Second Amendment, but, and then you follow it with some kind of stipulation saying that, but only under this circumstance you support it, then you in fact actually do not support the Second Amendment. It says shall not be infringed. So what you're saying is, I support the right to keep and bear arms uninfringed, except I have certain stipulations. So now it would be infringed. Does that make sense? I mean, to me, it does not make sense. You literally do not support the Second Amendment. If that is the case, if that's where you stand, that's fine. You have every right to your opinion. I have no problem with you having an opinion or stating your opinion. You have a right to freedom of speech. You have a right to have an opinion. However, you are lying to yourself and anyone else when you say that you support the Second Amendment, but you don't support the Second Amendment. You may like guns and you may like the fact that you can have guns, but you support carrying guns the way that you support carrying guns, the way that you see fit, not uninfringed. The Second Amendment is pretty clear about that. Uninfringed. All right, so this is what I call sunshine patriots, okay? I've talked about it before. It's not my idea. It's not my name, but, this is exactly the definition of a sunshine patriot. When things are hard, you fold, you compromise. It's difficult, so we don't want to do it. We don't want to try to push this issue. Let me just give you full disclosure here, everybody. I am a life member of the NRA. I also open carry. And with that said, I have a dog in this fight. I am really upset at the NRA for this press release condemning open carry, basically. And I can't even begin to understand why they thought that this was a good idea, because it is a bad idea. It is a bad idea. This is sowing division within the ranks. I mean, it's hard enough to gain support for open carry to begin with, okay? It's right, but it's hard to get support from the NRA and other just people that are sunshine patriots, basically, and like, I only really want to support the carrying of firearms concealed. I think you should have a right to a firearm, but only concealed. I don't want you to show that. I don't want you to have it out on your hip and I want nobody to see it. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Well, let me just point out the fact, everybody, that you have a right to keep and bear arms, and it's constitutionally protected. And you have a constitutional protection for the government not to be able to infringe it. But nowhere in the Constitution that I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, people, do you have a right to not be offended. You don't have that right to not be offended by somebody lawfully, legally, not threatening somebody. Now, I understand if you're pointing the gun at somebody, all right, that's different. That's a threat. Pointing a gun at somebody is a threat. Shooting a gun is a threat. I mean, that's a big deal. That kind of situation, that's when you start infringing on other people's rights. It's kind of the same argument, where someone's rights begin, yours end, kind of those situations, as long as you both are lawfully, legally, constitutionally asserting your rights and you're not harming anyone else, there's no problem. But you don't have a right to not be offended. You don't have a right to feel comfortable because somebody is asserting their rights and making you feel uncomfortable. Big deal. You have a right to leave the area. You have a right to mosey on down the road and get away from that situation if it makes you feel uncomfortable, but you don't have a right to not feel uncomfortable. All right? And like I said, about the NRA, I've known for a long time that they don't truly support open carry. And so this was really no surprise to me, but their statement, I cannot believe that they released this statement. It's going to be used for the rest of time by anti-gun groups. This has got to be the worst thing that's happened to the gun rights movement that I've seen personally. I mean, with the exception of the mass shootings and everything that are being heavily publicized every chance that they get. I mean, that's obviously a big blow to open carry, to gun rights, things like that. And it's a horrible, tragic event. Those are awful tragedies. But let's be clear about those things. The vast, vast majority of those things are happening from the mentally deranged. The vast majority of these things are happening on soft targets in gun-free zones. That's a fact. I mean, it's just a fact. We have a problem. The problem is the dismantling of our mental health system that happened by who? The liberals. The liberals started dismantling our mental health system. And now we've got all these people out on the streets that probably shouldn't be there. They're a danger to society. So now they're getting guns and they're shooting people. Let's start with the real problem. These people shouldn't be out there in the first place. They're a danger to society. And I have a problem with the so-called most influential gun rights organization, the NRA, speaking out against gun rights. I mean, they had Mothers Demand Action agree with them. They said, thank you for agreeing with us. Are you freaking kidding me? Look, I understand the NRA's point, even though I disagree with it, but they're playing politics. And what do I mean by that? They argue that open carry is such a divisive issue that they fear that it will and has affected their ability to lobby new gun-friendly laws. All right, that may be true. They may have, in fact, had issues with that. But first of all, let me just say that if you know something is right, and by right I mean not a right, I mean it is correct. It doesn't matter what other people say. All right? Let me just point out the fact that we have the right to bear arms. It's a natural human right. It's not given to us by the Constitution, though it is constitutionally protected. The Constitution does not give you anything. Neither do laws or politicians. I totally disagree with the NRA's spinelessness. And in my opinion, we need to clean house in the NRA, just like in the Republican Party. They're using the same tactics that the rhinos in the establishment Republican Party are doing too. And they can't do what's right because it's hard. Oh, it's hard. It's hard to get support. It's hard to win. I'm afraid we may lose. You know what? Stand up for your principles. Otherwise, you will lose. You lose supporters when you don't actually stand up for what's right. I'm not afraid. And why is that? Why am I not afraid? Why don't I worry about the majority taking away my rights? Because they can't. My rights are inherent. They'll always be there. They can try to take them. But like a real patriot, Charlton Heston once said, take my guns when they pry them from my cold, dead hands. Charlton Heston didn't worry about coming across too strong. He wasn't worried about being downright scary. He was worried about individual freedom being attacked. It seems like the only thing that the NRA these days is worried about is compromising our rights away. So, and it is really, they have compromised and compromised. We are, as gun owners, we are the most compromising people in the world. We have compromised and compromised. We've given up so many rights. We now need permission from the government in many states by carrying a permit, getting a license. We need permission in order to do something that is considered a right. We need to ask permission from the government. Hey, government, is it okay if I have a gun? Oh, thank you. Thanks for allowing me. How is it a right if I have to ask for permission to do it? Why do I have to ask for permission to do something that is a right? Why am I treated like a criminal for trying to purchase a gun, which is a right? I get background checked. They check to see if I'm a criminal. This kind of stuff, this is stuff that we have compromised on every step of the way. Who doesn't compromise? The liberals. They want us to compromise on everything. They want you and me to give up everything, and they'll do that little by little. Look, we need to keep the guns out of the hands of crazy people. We need to protect the children. So, hey, let's put in more background checks. Oh, what do you know, like the children? Look, it's steps like this. We've lost so much ground. We've lost so much ground in terms of our gun rights. What have they given? The liberals don't give anything. They don't compromise. The only thing that they've compromised on is they've allowed us to keep our guns this long. They're coming for your guns. We need to unify. With that said, I'm not leaving the NRA. I will make my stand and try to change the NRA. This is a message for all of you NRA members out there. We need to look long and hard at this organization. We need to clean house. We need to get this group back on track, because it appears to me that we've fallen off the rails at some point. We're attacking other gun right groups publicly? And, you know, I don't believe it. I cannot believe it. This is not the way to get things done. So all of you NRA members out there, myself included, fix it. Anyway, we're moving on. If you want to join the conversation today, give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. And at this point, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more after this.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
You've got a question? He's got the answer.
All right, we're back, and it's time for the segment of the show where I answer your questions. So if you got a question that you'd like me to answer on the air, you can ask your question in several ways. First, you can email us at Talk It On The Move Show. Of course, you can call us at 619-924-0986. You can also post your questions on our Facebook, facebook.com/On The Move Show. You can tweet us at On The Move Show. And when you do tweet, make sure that you include the hashtag AskMack. All right, so, if you do all these things or one of these things, I will try to answer your question on the air to the best of my ability. And with that said, we have a listener who's asked us a question. James King asked us on Facebook, what is my comment or understanding of the UN Agenda 21? All right, so those of you who aren't familiar with the Agenda 21, it's a UN agreement that was brokered in 1992 at a UN conference on environment and development. And it was held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. All right, so this is a conspiracy theory that a lot of people have out there, and it very well may be accurate, and I'm not really commenting necessarily on the authenticity of Agenda 21, but here's my understanding of the conspiracy theory of Agenda 21. It's supposedly going to create human-free zones in the United States and in the world and consolidate the human populations of the planet into densely populated areas. It uses the environmental movement to basically seize control slowly, and it hijacks our educational system as well, basically indoctrinating our children and dumbing them down, allowing the usurpation of power within the following generations, basically. So it implements population control and measures to lower the population to a more sustainable level. And I'm using quote fingers here, everybody, air quotes. And let me just point out, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy factist. There are things that are a matter of fact, and they really are conspiracies. Some people actually do plot and scheme to take power away and give it to themselves. The bottom line is I haven't actually done enough research on Agenda 21 to really know if it's real or not. I know the theory, and I mean that's the beauty of a conspiracy theory, is that if it wasn't a theory, if it was fact, you'd be able to prove it, which it wouldn't be a theory at that point. So, all that I've heard about Agenda 21 is what people have said and opinions based on YouTube videos and Facebook posts, and you guys know how those are. I haven't actually seen authenticated government or UN documents. I haven't seen this stuff, so I can't really say if Agenda 21 is real or not. But, if it is real, obviously I'm against it. But here's the deal, all right? If it is real, then it's using movements that I'm already opposed to. It doesn't really matter if I believe in Agenda 21 or not, because I'm a critic of the global warming movement. For me, I understand that it's a power grab. I understand that, these elitists are basically trying to force us to live our lives in a way that they themselves would never live their lives. They themselves are flying around the world in private jets, producing more carbon. And let's be clear, it's carbon dioxide. The green movement has basically changed the game. They started referring to carbon dioxide as carbon because it sounds more dirty. All right? They want you to believe that it's dirty. Carbon dioxide. I am producing a crapload of carbon dioxide right now as I'm talking. All right? It is not a pollutant. It has never been a pollutant. In fact, it is a staple of this planet. We have to have carbon dioxide in order to feed plants, which will then produce oxygen. So carbon dioxide has never been a pollutant. It's never. But they've changed the definition. Now it's classified as a pollutant, and it's this green movement. And let's be clear, all right? If you look at the atmosphere, and I'm stealing this from Mark Levin, got to give credit where credit is due. Hat tip, Mark Levin. If you look at the gases in the air in the world, and you imagine them as seats in a football stadium, if you had 10,000 seats in a football stadium, 2 of those would be carbon dioxide. 2. And we're doing all of this stuff trying to basically change our way of life, and every single thing that is being imposed on us from the EPA and this government, and they're killing coal. And coal still turns on a lot of lights in this country, everybody. You can't get rid of coal. But we're doing all this stuff trying to eliminate carbon dioxide. They're trying to reduce our emissions 30%. 30%. And they're killing coal in the process. They're killing jobs. They're destroying the economy, regulating the crap out of every aspect of our life and industry, making us uncompetitive in the global market. And we're doing all of this to eliminate and reduce 2 out of 10,000. Think about it like that. I mean, it's really nothing when you think about it. This is a power grab. This is about money. Look into the Chicago Carbon Exchange. Obama's fingerprints are all over it. It's crony capitalism. It's a fixed system. People are standing to make a lot of money over this system. Global warming or climate change, however they want to do it, it's all cooked books. And I'm not saying that the Earth is not getting warmer. What I am saying is that it's not a serious issue like they're trying to make it be. The Earth has natural cooling and warming cycles that it goes through, and we may perhaps be in a warming cycle, or we may not. But either way, it is really presumptuous to think that we as a country can do anything about the temperature of our planet based on what we're doing. And it's really presumptuous to think that we can fix the whole world. Obama can't fix our healthcare system. He can't even have a website that can run. Really, I mean, that is the biggest answer right there. Look, why would we trust somebody to fix our planet when this person can't fix a website? This person can't run healthcare. This person can't run our country. He's running it into the ground. So it's really presumptuous that anything that this man will do will fix anything. You know, I'm against the government being involved in our children's education. I don't think we need them. I think we can do it better, like I said earlier. I am for property rights, and, I'm against property tax, honestly. Property tax, I think, is the biggest sham ever. Think about it. We don't own anything anymore. Our founders, the founders of our country, they strongly believed in property rights. That was one of the big things that come in here, because you couldn't own property. Only the elite could own property in Europe. I mean, it's a big deal to our founders. But now we're paying property tax, and we never truly own anything. You don't own it. You're just renting it from the government. At any point, they can come take it back with things like eminent domain. You don't have a choice. They take it. And they'll take it for stupid things, too, not even necessarily things that are required. Eminent domain is where it was basically supposed to be only when they needed it for extremely urgent services like roads. If they wanted to build a highway, they would take a parcel of your land and pay it for you. I disagree with that already. To begin with, you violated that person's property rights. That private property is very, very important. However, now they're doing it for things like casinos, because it'll bring jobs. Hey, that's important, right? Jobs are important. We'll take your land and put a casino there. Or, even something like a hospital. A hospital is important, yes. But can't we find another place for it? Instead of actually stealing property from somebody, coercively taking it, can't you find a solution to make it work without doing that? Can we just all agree that coercion is a bad thing? That forcing someone to do something against their will is a bad thing? Whether or not the government does it or just anybody does it. Because let's be clear, I think we all know that people coercing some other people to forcibly do something that they don't want to do is a bad thing. But now it's okay when the government does that. When government forces people, that's okay. Let's just be clear, everybody. The government is people. It is people. So what you're saying is it's okay for people to force people to do something. That's what you're saying. And that's just not true. It is a bad thing to allow people to coercively take from another person. That's stealing. That's called theft. I am against big government, and I fervently believe that the government which governs best governs least. That's Thomas Jefferson. The fact is that you don't have to believe in Agenda 21 to oppose it. You don't. Every time I speak about individual freedom or personal responsibility, small government, the free market, I'm in fact speaking out against Agenda 21 if it actually exists. So, everyone tries to belittle conspiracy theorists for their beliefs. I don't agree with that. I don't like throwing people under the bus, especially, a lot of these people are on my team. They're on our teams. If you don't believe in the same principles of freedom, if you actually believe that, for example, all right, if you believe that 9/11 was an inside job, you may be, in disagreement with me, or you may be a little out there, but I'm not. The fact is, we believe in the same principles of freedom. We believe in the same kind of policies of small government. As long as you don't want to infringe on my liberties or anyone else's, I don't have any problem with you having a conspiracy theory. Go on with your bad self, man. Have that conspiracy theory. You're entitled to your opinion, and I have no problem with you. And I have no problem calling you an ally in the fight for freedom as long as we're turning that dial in the same direction. It really doesn't matter. You can be, pretty far out there, and that's fine. More power to you. But anyway, I just want to thank James King for joining our conversation and for getting on the move. And again, if you have a question that you would like to ask, and you want me to answer it on the air, please let us know. You can ask it in several ways. Email us at talkatonthemoveshow.com. You can call us at 619-924-0986. You can message us on facebook.com/onthemoveshow. Tweet us at onthemoveshow. And when you tweet us, make sure you include the hashtag AskMack. Anyway, at this point, we're going to take another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the Mack Attack. Don't go anywhere.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. All right, at this point, we're going to enter into the next segment of the show, and we like to call it the Mack Attack.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
All right, this is a segment of the show where I give you my take on outrageous events in the news. So if you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call at 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. So I know that everyone out there has been following this story. I know you couldn't help but follow this story. It's been on every social media site. It's been on every news channel. It's been on everyone's mind recently. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. He was a prisoner for these terrorists in I believe it was Afghanistan. They held him, and they held him for 5 years, from what I understand. He was exchanged for 5 top terrorist leaders that were being held in Guantanamo Bay. You know, first of all, I would just like to point out the fact that I am not one to jump on bandwagons. I don't care if I go against the grain. It really doesn't bother me. So if you disagree with me, that's fine. You are entitled to your opinion, and, you know, more power to you. But I'm not one to jump onto the bandwagon, especially before all the facts are in. So, you know, to me, it seems pretty crazy that everyone on talk radio and news, they're all jumping on the bandwagon, calling Bo Bergdahl a deserter or a traitor. All right, well, you know, they're entitled to their opinion. However, the fact is, he has a right to a trial, and I personally, I'm not going to join in trying to try him in the court of public opinion. I'm just not going to do it. You know, he very well may be a deserter, but we don't have all the information, and I refuse to condemn him based on information that I've been given at this point. I don't know. I don't know if this man actually was a traitor, a deserter. I have no idea. He very well may have joined the enemy, and by some accounts, he actually deserted his post and went out seeking the enemy. And then from there, their attacks suddenly became a lot more accurate after that point. So, I mean, it very well may be true, but all I know is that he has a right to a trial, and I will not try to join this lynch mob trying to get him, okay? So what I am outraged at is the fact that this administration has, in fact, negotiated with terrorists. We have had a policy that we don't negotiate with terrorists for the longest time. We don't. It has made us safer. Now, we've released 5 of the top dog terrorists we had in Guantanamo for one man. Not only does that make us look very, very weak, but this man, it is a fact that this man actually did leave his post, whether or not on purpose or otherwise. I don't know the story behind that, but this man may, in fact, be a deserter. And we've released 5 of the top terrorists? Really? For one man? This has made us less safe. Now they have a reason to kidnap more Americans. I mean, why wouldn't they? They got literally every single thing that they asked for. They got. Not to mention, and let me just point out the fact, okay? This is really, I'm very upset about this because in this culture, these terrorists face is a lot of, it means a lot to them, okay? So how you present yourself, strength and weakness, these kind of things are great for propaganda. We have given them the opportunity to make us look like we are bowing down to them. They flew in with a helicopter in a valley that was totally surrounded by these terrorists, and then we give up 5 for our 1. We're basically kissing the ring of these terrorists now. And don't think for one moment that this went unnoticed in these groups. I mean, this is going to be a recruitment tool. They are using this now to recruit new terrorists, more extremists. This has made us less safe. They are now going to kidnap more Americans to begin with because they'll get what they want. They've seen it. Now we'll negotiate. Hey, that policy's out the door there. That we will negotiate with terrorists now, apparently. So let me ask you one question here. And this is something I have to ask. What about the people that died from these terrorists? I mean, they have already killed American lives. And then where's their justice? I mean, we're basically freeing murderers. So, I mean, we are freeing murderers. There's no question about it. But, so what happens if the terrorists kill more Americans? Is that one life we got valued above the many lives that could be taken now? What will happen then? Does it matter to this administration? This is absolutely, unequivocally wrong. There is no way that you can justify one man's life for the untold many that may be lost due to these maniacs being released. Not to mention, like I said, the Americans that they're already responsible for killing. What about their justice? What about those people? How can we justify this? And the fact is we can't. And moreover on that is Obama violated the law. He broke the law. There is a law now on file that was put there by a Democratic Congress to prevent him doing exactly what he just did because he was talking about it. He wanted to do it. And they said, no, here's a law preventing you from doing this. Not only can't you just do it unequivocally unilaterally, but you have to give us 30 days notice. And he just did it. He just did it. He just broke the law. This is lawlessness. This is a president running amok right now, people. So where's the impeachment papers? Where's the articles of impeachment? Are they being filed right now? No, because there's no will to impeach. We got spineless people in our Congress right now. They're too worried about the upcoming November election. They're too worried about bringing the topic off of the issues. Obama's going to get away with this. These terrorists, they're going to kill again. That's on Obama. He's literally going to get away with murder. I cannot begin to fathom how Obama has managed to slip by this far with all the crap that he's done, all of the freaking scandals that are going on, and it seems like this administration can do whatever they want. There's no repercussions. No one will get arrested. Nobody even gets fired anymore. They just resign. There's no criminal charges. This is a crime. He broke a law. We are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And Obama needs to pay the price. That's just my opinion. But I think it's an opinion based on fact and law. This is utter lawlessness, and it doesn't seem like we have any politicians that are willing to do anything about it. They lack the spine. So anyway, I have another topic here that, since we were talking about global warming earlier, I figured I'd go ahead and just bring this in for a second. But I know there are many people in the conservative Republican style party there, that support Newt Gingrich. And I would just like to point out there's a commercial out that you may have forgotten about. And here's a commercial with Nancy Pelosi and Newt Gingrich.
Hi, I'm Nancy Pelosi. Lifelong Democrat.
Oh, one second. I'm starting it over.
Hi, I'm Nancy Pelosi, lifelong Democrat and Speaker of the House.
And I'm Newt Gingrich, lifelong Republican, and I used to be Speaker.
We don't always see eye to eye, do we, Newt?
No, but we do agree our country must take action to address climate change.
We need cleaner forms of energy, and we need them fast.
If enough of us demand action from our leaders, we can spark the innovation we need.
Go to wecansolveit.org. Together, we can do this.
Are you freaking kidding me right now? I mean, this is Newt Gingrich joining the ranks of Nancy Pelosi and these other climate change idiots. I can't vote for this guy anymore. You know, you guys, you draw your own conclusions about good old Newt. But I'll just say that I'm never going to vote for this man. Global warming is a sham. And like I said before, it's all about power. It's about billionaires trying to effectively kick out the ladder of success. You know, they've made it. Now they don't want you to make it. They're trying to restrict industry. They're doing it so bad that no one can possibly compete unless they're within the inner circle of the corporations that get special favors or exemptions from the government. And that literally is the definition of fascism. And by the way, I literally couldn't believe my ears when I heard Obama talking to our future officers at what was that place? West Point. There we go. At that academy, he was actually talking about how we're going to need these officers to actually help during the global warming catastrophes that are soon to come. Where there's going to be refugees, and we're going to need their help. And I literally could not believe my ears when I heard this. So I have a clip from Obama talking to the West Point graduates, and I'll go ahead and play that for you. Let me find that for you. Here we go. And I got it at, I believe it's at 40 seconds when he starts talking about it. Here we go.
A global effort to combat climate change, a creeping national security crisis that will help shape your time in uniform as we are called on to respond to refugee flows and natural disasters and conflicts over water and food, which is why next year I intend to make sure America's out front in putting together a global framework to preserve our planet. You see, American influence is always stronger when we lead by example. We can't exempt ourselves from the rules that apply to everybody else.
What is this maniac talking about? Seriously, what is he talking about? Exempting ourselves from rules that apply to everyone else? Do you think China gives a crap about the environment? No, China doesn't give a crap about the environment. Do you think that Russia gives a crap? No, they don't give a crap. What are you talking about, you maniac?
We can't call on others to make commitments to combat climate change if a whole lot of our political leaders deny that it's taken place.
Well, geez, I wonder why. I wonder why they're denying that it's taken place. Maybe it's because the science isn't settled, like you keep trying to shove down our friggin' throats. I am so tired of this debate because it's a debate that doesn't make sense. There is no science backing their side. But again, that doesn't really stop them for most of their actual beliefs. You know, the left, they don't stand on actual being right or wrong. They stand on fear-mongering. They stand on, trying to basically just trick people in using emotional arguments, things like that. There's so many billionaires out there that stand to make money from this crap. And I'm done. I'm done with this, man. I cannot take it anymore. But, apparently our troops in West Point couldn't either because he only got, I think 20% of the troops gave him a standing ovation. So, that says a whole lot about that situation. So, anyway, at this point, we're going to take our last commercial break, and we'll be right back. We're going to try to plow through the listener challenge, and we have a armed citizen, the weekly defender. There we go. All right, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. You know, it's really a shame that we only have 6 minutes left in the show. I could seriously, I could talk all day right now. There's so much going on. There's so many things that we all need to put on our radar. And I just think, I really have missed, by the way, doing this show. And I really appreciate everybody tuning back in today. So anyway, at this point, we're going to move into another segment we like to call it the Listener Challenge. Here we go.
I challenge you to a duel. Did you hear that? Sounds like it's time for a challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I challenge you, our listeners, to get out, get active, get on the move, do something. So your mission this week, if you accept it, is to go to facebook.com/Target. Yes, the store, the retail store, Target, and let them know that you support their store policy, which follows local and state laws regarding carrying firearms into their stores. They have a comment section on their Facebook page, and they are being targeted, no pun intended, by this anti-gun group, Mothers Demand Action. This is the very one that was thanking the NRA for agreeing with them. So Mothers Demand Action is pretending that their comments are spontaneous and demanding that Target bans firearms in their stores. So make sure that you tell Target how much you appreciate the fact that they follow whatever the state law does not prohibit in their stores. So you can carry a gun in your store as long as state law allows it. Thank Target. Make sure you thank them for not forcing you to disarm before shopping in their stores. And let them know that you will continue to shop there as long as they continue to respect your rights. This anti-rights activist group is basically trying to bully them into banning firearms in their store. And they really need support from patriots like you. The last thing that we want in our communities is more gun-free zones. They're dangerous. Just look what happened to Jack in the Box recently. Since they have asked their customers to no longer bring weapons into their restaurants, they've had a shooting and they've been robbed twice. Gun-free zones make us less safe. The people who will follow a store policy or law which bans guns are the people that you don't have to worry about in the first place, the law-abiding citizens. And with that said, please go to Target's Facebook page, facebook.com/Target, and let them know where you stand. Stand up, speak out, get on the move. Anyway, we're moving on to the next segment. We're going to move quickly through everything. Our next segment of the show is the Weekly Defender. Here we go.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is a segment where I report about armed citizens in the news who've used their firearms to defend their family, their property, and themselves. Our first Weekly Defender we found on KPRC in Houston, Texas. A 28-year-old veteran was having lunch at Quiznos in Houston, Texas, when he spotted two men with masks on, and they were entering a GameStop. The veteran retrieved a handgun from his vehicle and went to confront the criminals as they exited the store. One of the robbers aimed a firearm at the veteran, prompting the armed citizen to fire. During the exchange of gunfire, one of the robbers was struck and killed, while the other one fled the scene. The deceased robber's accomplice was captured by police a short time later. This happened on the 29th of May this year. Our next Weekly Defender we found on KSL in Salt Lake City, Utah. A pair of men, at least one of whom was armed with a handgun, broke into a home in Salt Lake City, Utah, and began threatening those inside. Earlier in the day, the duo threatened the homeowner's daughter over the phone. The homeowner responded to the break-in and retrieved a handgun and confronted the men, causing them to flee. The home invaders were captured by the police a short time later. Following the incident, Salt Lake City Police Detective Veronica Montoya told a local media outlet, "I think the two suspects were very lucky they weren't hurt because I think that we would all agree that if someone comes kicking in your door and you're armed and they're armed," she thought a little bit, and then she said, "I'm just really surprised that they didn't get hurt." So anyway, in my opinion, everybody, and the Constitution's opinion, and this show's opinion, you have a right to defend your life, you have a right to defend your family, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On the Move, we support your rights, and if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call, You'll be on the next show, 619-924-0986. That's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And with that said, I just want to thank our, first of all, our listeners. Thank you for tuning in week after week. I really appreciate it, everyone. And, also I'd like to thank Libertarian Party candidate Paul Addis for joining us on the show today. And, to get more information about the show, make sure you check out our website. Check us out at onthemoveshow.com. You can check us out here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, facebook.com/onthemoveshow, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and twitter.com/onthemoveshow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.